Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Get in the Herd After Hours. After Hours. I'm your host, Alex Bond. Get in the Herd is a recovery podcast brought to you by the McShin Foundation. I'm Alex Bond, your host, a person in recovery from substance use disorder, which means that for exactly 13 months, I have not found the need to put any mood or mind altering substances in my body and have become a productive member of society. I'm here with good buddies Jeff Breedlove and Mike Todd. Mike Hush Todd. Happy to have you guys on. Always a pleasure, gentlemen. Jeff, why don't you introduce yourself to those who don't know and a little bit about yourself?
Thanks, Alex. It's great to be here tonight. I'm Jeff Breedlove. I'm a person in long-term recovery. Well, it means a couple of things tonight. Lord willing, if I make it to Monday the 26th, that will be my celebration day of 4 years. So we're going to batten down the hatches and dig in with the family and hope we make it safely to Monday. I'm on the staff at the Georgia Council on Substance Abuse. I work on policy and communications under the leadership of our executive director, Neil Campbell. And I work with a team of 30 peers in recovery. And we do a lot of things, a CARES program, a warm line, peer coaches in the hospital, RCO, recovery community programs, over 30 of them across the state of Georgia in communities. Wow. And of course, a little bit of advocacy work that Neil and I do. And it's, I'm just so excited for where recovery is going across the Southeast and across the nation. And it's great to be on After Hours tonight.
Lovely to have you again, buddy. Thank you very much for all the work you do as well. Mike, the reigning champ, most guest appearances, continuing to hold the belt.
Wait a minute. Now I have a challenge. Okay. So now I got to go.
No,
yeah.
I love I love this podcast. I really do. I mean, I think the darn thing just won an award or something, didn't it?
It did. We
yeah. And then he freezes up, telling
Then he froze up. Choked up with emotion.
Choked up with emotion. You froze up for a minute, Alex. No big deal.
Yeah, we've officially won the best podcast in Richmond from the Richmond Times-Dispatch. I think it was a couple Sundays ago. Thanks to all of our viewership and people, gentlemen like yourself, who've helped us. Been wonderful guests and advocates and watched and spread the word about it. So we really appreciate your help and contribution there. Mike, what you been up to? What's in Mike's world, man?
Mike Todd, person in long-term recovery and a regular here. He went out again, but no big deal. Might want to wait for him. Hold on. Is he there?
I don't think so.
Hey, it may just be me and you, Breedlove.
It's Friday night. We'll make it happen.
It's Friday night, man. We'll wait for him to come back on here before I introduce myself. We'll see if we can get Alex back. Usually, he never has a problem, really.
Yeah, I haven't seen one before.
Usually, if we have a problem, it's with my audio. So we'll
Maybe
see what
I don't
happens.
know if it's bad weather where he is up there or not.
Is that what it is?
I don't know.
I don't know what's going on. So here we are.
Maybe you could give everybody a football update from across the street. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, I had to switch over to another room because the football game across the street. But anyway, let's see if Alex gets back on here. I don't know if I can text him or.
Go ahead and just roll with it, guys, because you guys had a pretty good conversation going on beforehand. So just go ahead and pick it up from there. I'll sit here and moderate in the background as best as I can. But
okay.
One of the things that we had talked about was with Jeff. We had had posted a video yesterday about a spike in overdoses, especially in Georgia yesterday. So is that something that you could actually just, for anyone that has not seen that post, go ahead and just elaborate a little more on that so we can help get the word out, because it's not just Georgia, it's going to trickle other places because people were moving around. So
yeah, no, absolutely. So we have this great partnership with what's called Northeast Georgia Medical System, which is a very large hospital in Gainesville, Georgia, on the north side of Metro Atlanta, and then they have 3 smaller hospitals across Northeast Georgia, and they have peer coaches in the emergency room in the NICU. Well, we got a report from our peer coaches that there was this massive spike just out of the blue, 14 peers involved. And we know the drugs involved were heroin and meth, and we know they were laced with fentanyl and carfentanil. And we know that Narcan had to be deployed on multiple doses, if you will, or situations. And it is and was. Let Johnny Fab host. There we go. Bring Johnny in. And I shouldn't have made it lighthearted there in the middle of a serious moment, but it is life and death situation here in North Georgia and across Atlanta. And to make it worse, we then started getting reports from people that we know are credible sources in recovery from across Metro Atlanta that other cases are showing up. So, nobody's talking about any blame. We just want to get the word out. That there is some seriously laced product on the street right now. And our message to people that know people in Georgia, this is the time, if you are in recovery or an ally of recovery and you know somebody in active addiction, do your best to get in touch with them and say whatever it is you need to say to get the word to them that no judgment. We've all been there, but this is maybe not the time. It's a good time to be aware of that this deadly strain is out there right now, and we know it's fentanyl based. We know it's carfentanil, and we know, fortunately, no one died the other night that we know of, and I think we would know, but we know some folks came way too close, and it's a bad situation.
So, Mike, is that something that you're seeing as well, Mike? Are you seeing a spike there in South Carolina as well, just locally? Because you're in the outer parts, right? You're not in Jeff's more in a metro area, but you're in a suburb area. So, are you seeing more of a spike, out in your location as well?
Yeah, just a quick question, Jeff. What period of time was that? Were those 14 overdoses? Was that in
this all happened in the past 48 hours.
Oh my
maybe
God.
72 hours, but just
that's significant. And one other question, Todd, if you don't mind, I was just, are you guys able to give out fentanyl testing strips in Georgia, or are you facing the same things that we're facing in South Carolina, where it's considered drug paraphernalia? Because it would seem that if you guys could get a mass amount of fentanyl strips out, that would definitely save some lives. I've just got if I got this is
Yeah, no, I actually look. I like to always say, like, I know everything. I don't know about the law. I will find out tomorrow the law on the fentanyl strips. But I will tell you this: we don't have that conversation a lot in Georgia. We have a wonderful organization I'd like to give a shout out to, the Georgia Overdose Prevention Association. Two moms who both lost their sons to this, and Laurie and Tracy. And I was on with them today. And listen, they got Narcan better. These two ladies, we got Narcan all over. I was in Southwest Georgia, and they had a table down there the other night with a volunteer. Narcan, we've got a great organization, but the fentanyl strips, I don't see them as commonly. We don't talk about them as much, so I would say Georgia's not proficient in those.
Yeah, and what we're facing in South Carolina, and I'm just kind of comparing because 14 in 48 hours. That's nuts. But no, in South Carolina, fentanyl strips are considered actual contraband, and we are really not supposed to give out fentanyl strips. But anyway, but no. Back to Todd's question. Todd, what I'm hearing in South Carolina, and this was a report with WIS out of Columbia, out in the state capital, South Carolina, 50% increase. Of course, we talked about the 2018 80% increase in Greenville County. We haven't got any numbers from 2019. So in essence, yes, it sounds like there is the scary thing about what Jeff's talking about is this sounds like this is a very bad batch. And that's really scary. And I think with the increase of what we have in South Carolina, and then you get a bad batch, the next thing you know, this could happen anywhere. You got 14 bodies, laying there. This is really what Jeff is talking about, man. And I wish more people were looking at this podcast. This is significant, man. And I'm telling you, it could happen anywhere. And we really need to get something done with fentanyl strips and get fentanyl strips out on the streets. There's no doubt about that. I haven't heard of that many in that short a period of time. Maybe somebody else has, but Jeff, I'm so sorry that's going on in Atlanta and in Georgia.
So, Mike, you mentioned about the data. So you have up to 2018. You said.
Well,
right?
There was a big thing in Greenville County. The data in 2008 in Greenville County here was at 80%, and then WIS out of Columbia is calling it a 50% increase statewide. We're really I don't know what's going on. We're not really getting. And Jeff, I don't know if y'all are going through this in Georgia. We're not getting a whole lot of numbers, and I think maybe they don't want us to get the numbers.
Well, Mike, let me comment on that because it's fascinating, and we have gotten some numbers, and that's what's scary. So let me maybe share two sets of numbers we got. So back in February, March, when COVID really hit, and we suspended our General Assembly, then they went to virtual committee meetings. And of course, they had a meeting pretty early in the process on the state budget because that's a big deal. And the budget director got up and was doing his testimony and was very professional about it. The only source of state revenue throughout most of COVID that has gone up in the positive direction for the state in terms of tax revenue has been alcohol sales. So that's public testimony right there from our budget people that alcohol sales, they're doing just fine. So that was the first kind of set of numbers we got. And then unfortunately, and I'll try to get this right. So right here.
Yeah, I want to see that.
So this is from the Georgia Department of Public Health, suspected drug overdose increases in Georgia amid COVID-19. You see at the top there, Kathleen Toomey, medical doctor, commissioner. Yeah. So Dr. Toomey is our Fauci, our Dr. Fauci. She's a brilliant doctor, and she's not political. She's a doctor. And she gives all our COVID updates, and she's done 2 memos, actually. And it says right here that Georgia now understands and recognizes officially a recent increase in drug overdoses involved in ED visit overlaps with the emergence of COVID-19. And she goes on to validate this from hospital reports. But understand, the state of Georgia has now said COVID-19 has increased overdoses in hospitals across the state. And it goes on to say it's the number 1 situation. So the numbers that we have gotten, unfortunately, validate the fear that this is, and Dr. Timmy said this too, substance use disorder is the epidemic within the pandemic.
Yes.
So I want to give her credit. She has tried to sound the alarm. Not tried, she has sounded the alarm. I want to acknowledge that. Our commissioner of DBHDD and Judy Fitzgerald has sounded the alarm. Our General Assembly did not cut any funds for recovery during the budget. So I want to give credit where credit's due, and it's been supported by Democrats and Republicans. So we've heard numbers here. Unfortunately, the numbers we've heard are really bad numbers.
Yeah, sorry for the technical difficulties, guys. I really appreciate your professionalism and moving on. I kind of just wanted to jump in and make sure I'm understanding this correctly. So the memo you were showing us, Jeff, has an actual, data and evidence that COVID-19 has caused more overdoses in hospitals in the state of Georgia.
Oh, absolutely. And she's done 2 memos to make that point clear. So
okay.
She's getting data. To her credit, she's making it available. Now, I will say this, and I, in Georgia, I think at the state level, Democrats and Republicans get along fairly well. I mean, everybody wants to win, but they get along pretty good. It's not like Washington. And, I don't mean this any other way than to say the system's been overwhelmed because of COVID. And so some of the other reports, it might take them a little bit longer now than it takes them if they weren't in the middle of, a pandemic. So I think our state agencies and the staff that work there, they're working really hard to get relevant information out as fast as they humanly can. So I appreciate their work, but unfortunately for us with our disease, the numbers that are coming out, on the one hand, are devastating from a medical perspective. On the other hand, from an advocacy perspective, they validate the point that this is the time to expand funding for our disease, not cut it.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree.
Yeah, and I mean when you said that in that time period, and Alex, you cut out, but Jeff was just telling us that there were, and I guess you heard about this. Or 14 overdoses in roughly 48, 72 hours, something like. I mean, that's what we're seeing. We're seeing that here too. I mean, like we do community Narcan, and we actually have state funding, and we've had like 11 reversals reported now, where they've called us and said we used your Narcan. We've had like 11 reversals in the past couple of months. I mean, so it's really scary. I mean, and again, I say we've got to get the fentanyl strips out. And you know what, man? I'm going to tell you what we're doing in Greenville. We've got people giving this stuff out. Either they're saying, "Go ahead and arrest me if you want to." I mean, we've got people giving out fresh syringes. We don't have a syringe exchange in South Carolina, but we've got. I don't mind telling you, man. Challenges Inc. here in Greenville, South Carolina, has given out. I wrote it down. 1,500 Narcan kits in the last 5 weeks. That is fantastic. That is phenomenal. They've got I just want to brag about my community for just a second. I mean, even though we don't have a syringe exchange, even though we're limited on what we can do with naloxone, we have people raising their own money, going out getting intermuscular because our state won't let us have intermuscular. If you're a community Narcan distributor, you can only give out nasal. But they have given out 1,500 intermuscular. There's no telling how many syringes that they've given out. And I mean, Mark Burrows and Chris Stepp and the Stepp family. Chris Stepp lost his daughter in the past year, and he said, "To hell with this! I'm going out, and I'm gonna give this stuff out. And if I go to jail, I'm gonna go to jail." But I'm telling you, I'll be the first to bail him out. He is doing a phenomenal job. I mean, he is hitting the street with an army, and it's amazing what Greenville's doing. And I'm so proud of my community right now. But Jeff, I'm so sorry this is happening, man. I know
Well, this happened. Yeah, and I want to talk about Greenville for a minute in South Carolina. I'm so privileged to hear what you said because, Neil Campbell, our executive director, and I were talking as we were just strategizing about getting ready for the session, and Neil just sort of, it was on a Zoom, and she just said, "You know what, I'm done." She said, "This is a civil rights issue." She said, "We're going to take it up a notch in Georgia. We're just going to quit, whatever, and we're going to call it for what it is."
That's
and
right.
see, when you say things like you're sharing, that the gentleman there just said, "I'm willing to go to jail over this," and we're going to pass this out to say, but at some point in this epidemic, within this pandemic, and it will be an epidemic after this pandemic, at some point, enough people are going to speak up and speak out, and we'll get this pivot like they did with cancer, like they did with AIDS, where we're just going to hold the elected officials accountable, and they'll be, look, there's not a politician in America today that wants to stand up to the cancer awareness community.
That's right.
They just don't. And the number one funded medical research in Washington, D.C., where Republicans and Democrats fight over each other in the affirmative, is AIDS research, which is a heck of a big change from 1985 and 6. So, I mean, we've got to get there, and we've got to get to the point where politicians want to say, are we funding fentanyl strips enough for you? Are we funding whatever it is that you need to save lives enough for you? We're not there yet. I think the good news is we're getting there faster in the next few years than we have in the past 10 years. But we have much work to do. But I'm encouraged to hear what you share out of Greenville. That fires me up.
Oh yeah, basically the community is getting together and saying, you know what, state, and here's the. I don't want to get in trouble because I'm a community Narcan distributor, and I'm grateful. I get the nasal Narcan. Our state pays $75. You have 2 in the package. We pay $75 for that. And don't get me wrong, I'm grateful that we have it. But we can get intermuscular at $2.50 from my buddy gets it for $2.50 from Pfizer. And he can go out and raise $500 or $1,000 or a couple grand here and there and really and make a huge difference. Like I said, that's amazing. 1,500 naloxone kits. I mean, their wives are sitting there putting these things together. We've been going out with backpacks. I mean, it's amazing, and it's going to take the community. But $2.50 for intermuscular as opposed to $75 for nasal. So I have a $25,000 grant with the state to get the nasal, which I don't know what 25,000 times 75. That's what, about 300 and some odd kits. Alex, are you good with math?
I do have a computer at least.
Right. I mean,
that's 333 kits.
See, 333 kits. I mean, but I'm going to tell you, my folks
versus 10,000 kits if they're $2.50.
Bam. Okay, and I get it. It's easier if you're under a bridge and a guy overdoses. It's easier to get the nasal, and you don't have to deal with the vial and all that. But the point is for $2.50, we can and I told a state legislator this. We can saturate South Carolina. I mean, like, we can have this on every corner, giving it out, and but yeah, Jeff, I mean, do you guys give out, just a question, you guys do nasal or intermuscular, or
nasal? It's nasal. And
yeah.
And
that's how it is here too in Virginia, because a lot of the intermuscular are expired now, even though that they're just past an expiration date that is just numbers. I mean, they're still utilizable.
Right.
And I'm telling you, they've done a fantastic job. Like I said, this Stepp family, Chris Stepp and his tribe, his family, they've done an amazing job really pinpointing areas. Like, I live in West Greenville, and there are 2 camps here, and they're using this naloxone over and over and over again. And we're creating a relationship with these folks. We're not just going out and saying, hey, here's your Narcan, because that's a little judgmental, right? I mean, we're raising money. We're giving them socks, and I mean, they're making sandwiches for them, and I mean, it's just amazing. And we're meeting these people with dignity, right?
Right.
And the next thing is we've got to have somewhere for them to go when they're ready, and we're working on that too. But we're so far behind the 8 ball in South Carolina. It's crazy. I don't even know where to start.
And Mike, the word you keep bringing up is a community. It's one person standing on a street corner handing out Narcan isn't as purposeful as a community of 25 people with sandwiches and bags and coming together, handing out all this extra stuff. So then people automatically start getting a bug in their ear about maybe finding recovery in the meantime as well.
But did you guys see the thing that Joanna Vance posted on Facebook today about West Virginia, where these guys were doing the same thing, and the sheriff in West Virginia is telling them, you're going to have to stop because this is illegal. I could possibly see this happening. I'm trying to get a meeting with our Sheriff Lewis, but he's right in the middle of an election, and I mean, he's not going to have a problem, but I don't think that I think it's kind of spooking him, because he was going to meet with us, and now it's like, I'm sure he doesn't want something coming up. Hey, Sheriff Lewis wants to have, syringe exchange.
So
people will take the ball and run with it very easily. Yeah.
Hey, Todd, Alex, I was texting with Neil, and I asked her, were fentanyl strips legal in Georgia? Because I don't know everything. And she said yes, but they are hard to get because of the demand, but they are legal. And
that's great.
We have work to do there. They're hard to get. I mean, I wasn't even familiar with them really, but
I can imagine it's also one of those things where certain medications are, of course, they're legal, but you could jack the prices through the roof to just make it inaccessible.
Right. And, I want to talk about the point Mike was just making about the sheriffs. I mean, I'm optimistic. Now, somebody was on a platform with me recently talking about, may have been Garrett with Ryan's group, Mobilize Recovery, but their friend OD'd in one county, and it was just a couple of miles from the next one. And in the one county, the sheriff was pro Narcan, and the other one they weren't. And they're just about the separation of like a couple of blocks. And it was very scary to hear them say that. Which I just met the police chief in Albany, Georgia, an African-American police chief, and the police chief in Marietta, Georgia, and the sheriff in Polk County. And I see more and more sheriffs and police chiefs getting sick and tired of going to calls and it being the friend or relative of somebody they know in the community who's dead. And they're starting to speak up more and more, saying we got to change this law, or I need Narcan, or I want this option, or I want that option. And so we're starting to work with them more formally to put a coalition of law enforcement leaders together, because what happens is I think we're getting some of them out here like like they're little planets. We have such a big state, 159 counties, with the biggest state east of the Mississippi River land-wise. And, I think when we bring them together, then others in law enforcement will go, I didn't realize there were that many sheriffs, And once I think we get them comfortable with this concept, it is my prediction, I rarely make a prediction, that one of our strongest allies in recovery, at least in our state, in the next 4 years, or the 2022 and 2024 cycle, will end up being elected sheriffs and appointed police chiefs.
Jeff,
I really think so.
Jeff, let me ask you something, because I think you're kind of like a recovery lobbyist, or if we can call it that. I hate to even use that word, but
I got a badge that says that, so it's okay.
Well, no, and so maybe at some point we're going to have that in South Carolina. But so back to the sheriff thing, and do you think it's possible that we're going to be able to possibly do this on a county by county level, one county at the time, involving the sheriff saying, hey man, can county council actually, I don't know how this works. Okay. But
how much they influence policy, that sort of stuff.
Like, can the county council come in and get with the sheriff and say, okay, we're going to give out fentanyl strips and syringe.
Yeah. Absolutely. And
Okay.
I'm no expert in South Carolina, but I know it well enough. And in fact, I would suggest to everybody listening that that's really where the power is. So we actually work at the city and county level first. And once we put together a coalition at the city and county level, that's where all of a sudden the statewide people and the federal people, your members of Congress and your senators, once you can show them, and I'll just use some Georgia numbers. Okay. So I'm not good at math either. I saw that Johnny did it without a calculator a minute ago, and Alex had one, but I'm not good at math.
Nerd.
But nerds. But 159. So I'm going to say, 160 counties, ish. So, if you start getting 80, 90 sheriffs on a sheet of paper in Georgia, that's where you start shattering the stigma. Then you're going to pick up the other 30 and 40. And then all of a sudden, the rest are the ones that are going, oh, now I'm marginalized. And then when you get that many sheriffs, then you go to your members of Congress on the Appropriations Committee and to your U.S. senators, and you go, you do realize all these sheriffs are for this. And they go, no, well, they are. And they're going to be talking back home about who is voting which way in Washington. So it's actually, the way it really works is to start from the city and county up to the state and then to Washington. So it has to work that way, Mike. And I think we can make it work that way, both in a state like Pennsylvania, where Johnny is, Virginia, where Alex is, frankly, in any state, because we're not reinventing the wheel here. And other medical issues have done it exactly the same way.
See, okay, so I think it would be a stretch in Greenville County, because I've talked to Sheriff Lewis before, and his attitude is, bottom line is these are people's children, right? That's kind of his thought. And can we get together and educate you more? But I still think it would be a stretch, because he's conservative. You ain't gonna get voted sheriff in Greenville County unless you are a card-carrying conservative Republican.
NRA member, yeah.
NRA.
Oh, sure. And that's good.
I think you're giving me an idea, because we've been thinking Columbia. And here's the other issue we're having, and I don't know if you're having this in Georgia, and Alex, if you're having this in Virginia, but our HIV is spiking like crazy too, to the point that the CDC has actually given the state money and said, do something about this, because South Carolina's dragging the whole country down, and we know what it is. It's not rocket science, man. These guys are picking needles up off the ground. Come on, man. And so they're basically saying, the CDC's basically recommend. I've sat in some meetings last week with our county, with our state agency, but it's like we're talking about it, but okay, we understand we need syringe exchange, but it's stuck in medical committee, Jeff. I mean, it's just sitting there and
Right. Well,
dead
Mike,
in the
I'll tell you
water.
what. Now, I know you know Tommy's, right?
I'm sorry, Tommy's.
And Tommy's Country Biscuit Breakfast
Oh
place.
yeah, oh absolutely, man.
You know,
Yeah.
listen, all jokes. We'll have to come up there. We have to. Well, we can sit down and talk about this because
Yeah,
you can buy me some food at Tommy's.
absolutely, man.
Pretty
That's the
good.
hangout.
Let me give a shout out to Tommy's in Greenville. But listen, it can work, and this is what I say. It doesn't matter to me. It really doesn't anymore. If they're a card carrying NRA conservative, Ronald Reagan Trump Republican, or if they are the Bernie Sanders Joe Biden ACLU card carrying left center Democrat, it
Bipartisan
doesn't
issue.
matter. This is truly one issue that honestly doesn't discriminate in the sense of its medical. There's discrimination within it, but I mean, it'll kill you no matter who you are. And as we educate Republicans and Democrats in Georgia, I see the proof in the pudding. I mean, we've got over 45 members of the working group on addiction and recovery, and I don't think you could draw a line between the numbers of Democrats and Republicans that are active, because I've got some of the most conservative and most liberal members of the General Assembly. It's one of the only things they'll agree on is funding for our issue, because their constituents are dying or are being impacted by it. And once we get them to confront that, and a Republican state senator gets his Republican sheriff, and a Democrat House member gets their Democrat mayor to say, we're just tired of the deaths, it's almost like a hot knife through butter. What can happen?
Yeah, and not only that, when you got the CDC breathing down your throat, going, "Hey, South Carolina, you're dragging our numbers down," because I don't have the paper in front of me, but they want to try to eradicate HIV by, I'm gonna say it's like 2030, and I may be wrong, but they've got this ambitious goal, and then you got South Carolina, dragging everybody down, with the HIV. I mean, something's got to change. But you've given me an idea that I think when we meet with our state with Recovery Advocacy Project, and we're trying to figure out how to get this done, it's not necessarily that we've got to do it in Columbia. We can do it with like our sheriff's association.
But that's exactly right.
Yeah.
And listen, it's not just them. Think about this. So let's use the HIV situation. So let's just say it's in Greenville. Okay. So property values are going down. So that makes job providers antsy. It makes shoppers antsy. And so all of a sudden, now your retail association, you can educate them that this is a problem. And then your all your different homeowners associations. And then all of a sudden you can talk about your education people, because who wants their kids walking on needles on the way to the park and the school? And when you build this broad in jobs, so restaurateurs, people don't want to go to the restaurant if the word gets out there's needles on the street where all the restaurants are in the town. So you get the restaurant association involved, and you get the local chamber involved, which then talks to the state chamber in Columbia. Once you build your coalition, because look, and I mean, we're all in recovery, so we can speak truth to power. I mean, we're not bad people, but it is a bad disease, and it's a serious disease, and there's consequences from it, and these consequences, needles on the street, are not exactly what videos by the Chamber of Commerce and the Visitors Associations feature. And when you connect the dots for those stakeholders, that if they embrace recovery, it's better for taxes, it's better for jobs, it's better for families, it's better for communities, but you got to have the courage to acknowledge it. You put that coalition together at the county level of all those stakeholders, they're doing the work for you in Columbia all of a sudden.
No, I'm glad we're talking. And Alex, it's almost like we're talking on this is the good thing about you're seeing the Recovery Advocacy Project really at work here, where South Carolina and Georgia are kind of collaborating and trying to figure some things out. I wanted to ask you, Jeff, and thank you. I need to talk to you more often.
Sure.
Alex, I got to ask him a question. I'm doing your job.
Please, no. You guys are completely fine. I could sit here and watch y'all and live time solve some of these problems. I do have an important question that I want to ask that has to do with some news recently, but I don't want to interrupt the momentum. I'm being dead serious right now. It doesn't make any sense to switch topics when there's actual solutions being brought in front of us right now.
Well, and hold your question, because I definitely want to hear it. But as far as the opioid pharma litigation funds that are obviously going to be coming to our states, I think you guys have put together a recovery committee that is advocating to make sure that those funds go to recovery services. Have you guys done that? And can you kind of tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so
it's his job, but
no, I'd love to comment about that and give a lot of credit where it's due. So listen, it all goes back to advocacy. And so George is blessed to have an attorney general who's our point person. His name is Chris Carr. And General Carr is he's about as strong as ally as you can get. When you go into General Carr's personal office at the Capitol, he's got 2 printers beside his desk. Okay, these big printer things. And on the printer, covering up the printer, are the faces on one of people in recovery and on the other of people that we've lost to our disease. That's on the Attorney General's desk, right beside his desk in the state of Georgia. He is truly an advocate for us. And so when the Attorney General put his statewide opioid task force together, he included Neil Campbell. He, in a lapse of judgment, included me. I'm sure he gets criticized for that. But he put recovery leaders on the team, and we have a voice with him, and he is the direct voice to the governor. So I have to say, recovery is well represented by Attorney General Chris Carr for what Georgia is going to ultimately do with these opportunities, and that's what every state has to do. In most states, it's probably Attorney General, but I don't know in your state. But you need to know in your state who the governor has made the point person, or the Constitution has made the point person, and you need to make sure that person is recovery friendly really fast.
Okay, so that is a perfect pivot into what I wanted to ask. Okay, so someone recently in a very public forum has mentioned their alliance with recovery. So I don't know what y'all think about Joe Biden coming out with his being very proud of his son in recovery. I think that's awesome. I think it's wonderful. It's good to have an ally running for president who's very aware of what recovery is. Do y'all actually, and he even during this process, during the debate, walked back the 94 crime bill, which I think we can all agree was pretty detrimental to the recovery community at large. I want to know if you, I don't know, maybe it's a weird one to ask. Do you think that he is using almost recovery as a political pawn or volleyball to bounce around, or is it way better for us that he's at least mentioning it to begin with? Because I think all press is good press at this stage in the game.
Jeff, you want that one?
Well, I'll take it. Sure, Mike. I mean, I'll answer it this way. It's always good when in a presidential debate your issue is mentioned. Of course, that's good. Now, I don't think for a minute, and I don't know Joe Biden, Vice President Biden. I've met Vice President Biden. I don't know him. I don't think for a minute he's using it as a quote political volleyball. I think he's being sincere. I do. I think clearly it's impacted his son, who he obviously loves, and yes, he wants the best for his son, and that has probably impacted his views on policy like it would almost any normal human being. So I'm sure when he says those things, he means them, and I'm sure he'll, if he's elected president, direct his administration to to do certain things that he would view as supportive of our disease. Now, at the same token, no, Donald Trump didn't mention it the way Joe Biden did at the debate. But look, I mean, I've seen the director of the Office of National Drug Control Policy at events. He's had our boss on events. You can look at the public record. I mean, it would be also unfair to say that President Trump's administration hasn't put historic record of money in that agency and that department. And that, so I think, again, I'm consistent on this. I think this is one issue that is bipartisan in nature. I think both sides want to support it. And I think what we want as a community is to be where the AIDS community is. We want from the White House to City Hall. We want Republicans and Democrats jockeying with each other to say, I gave more money to that medical issue. So my view is, look, math will say Clinton gave more than Bush, Bush gave more than Clinton, Obama gave more than Bush, and Trump gave more than Obama. And hey, look, if Biden wins, I hope he gives more than Trump. You know, we want more funding, but beyond the funding, that's where we need to get to. And that's where a President Trump, who I believe it's in his family with his father, had our disease, and President Biden, should he become President Biden with his son, we want everybody from the president down to the newest city council member in the smallest city in our state to make recovery one of their top 3 issues.
Yeah.
When we get there, we'll be where other medical issues are. So I say, it doesn't matter who you vote for, but recovery ought to be an issue that you vote for, and you ought to be asking candidates these questions, their surrogates these questions, their political parties these questions. And it's not so much the funding. I think we're going to get the funding. We need to get them to start talking about it. And I'm glad that the vice president talked about it. And I'm glad the president has some funding. And I hope that they both do more.
Sure. Absolutely. And I want to get to, Dark Sage's question eventually. I will say Johnny Fab brought up kind of what my sentiment is. Every candidate has run on making promises, on making shifts on the war on drugs, and once in office, failed to follow through. I believe him, but show me, don't tell me. That pretty much surmises my cynicism when it comes to this sort of stuff a lot of times. Again, great to see in a public platform like that. Please, Mike.
No, go ahead, Hush. I'm sorry. No, listen, and I'll make this quick. I am a veteran of the crack cocaine epidemic. Okay, so I'm going to tell you real quick. Not a fan of Joe Biden. Not saying who I'm voting. I don't want to get all into that, but because I'm going to tell you, he's a career politician that it made a career of locking us up, and it's about darn time last night that he backed it. He needs to unravel all of it because he has made a career of locking people with substance use disorders up, and he's locked a hell of a lot of minorities up. So, I mean, I'm going to tell you, I wasn't happy when he got the nomination for that reason, and it is personal to me because I remember how we were treated back then. We were treated in like third-class human beings, and it was beyond discriminatory. And he was part of it, and I'm sorry. That's just how I feel, and I feel very passionate about it. So I was pleased because I have been patiently waiting for him to tell me that he's going to unravel those policies, and he needs to unravel them because he's been the biggest problem, one of the biggest problems. He's made a career out of it. I'm sorry.
And let's take it a step further, if we can, Alex, on another issue. So in Georgia, we've got a coalition. We had a meeting today. We've had a lot of meetings, and we're getting ready for January. And there's a broad coalition coming together on the parity law. We all know what that is. You realize in Georgia, this bipartisan law has never been enforced. Talk about third-class citizens. And so there's so many issues that we have got to take to the next level. And Mike is absolutely right. Listen, I worked in Congress when that bill was passed. Okay, I've told this story. When I was asked by my boss, I was being very hypocritical. And you vote for the crime bill. I mean, you got to, and look, I was an active addiction. You talk about the height of arrogance and hypocrisy. That was Jeff Breedlove when he worked for a congressman around that same bill. The shame and guilt. Okay, but here's the deal. Whether you're Joe Biden or Donald Trump, I don't care about 1994. What I care about is, let's see substantive policy changes in 2020 and 2021 and 2022. And I don't care if you got a D by your name or an R by your name. I want results. Yeah. Johnny's absolutely right. Too many Republicans and too many Democrats, they talk the talk to get elected. Then we don't see serious policy changes. But let me say this really quick, Alex. At the end of the day, that's our fault because we have to organize ourselves as our friends are doing at Mobilize and other entities. We have to become that constituency of consequence. We communicate professionally with each other. And when we mobilize and organize and go to Washington in force in the near future, when we go to city halls in Greenvilles and Atlantas and Richmonds and Harrisburg, Pennsylvanias, when we do that, they'll be more afraid of us than we are annoyed and angry at them.
Well, yeah, and the last I want to mention about it, or at least maybe ask to Mike, and then we can move on to this last question this commenter had to wrap it up. Is, as we've talked about on this podcast before, just like in every other occasion, that was mentioned in the middle of the debate, and then the big takeaway was oil or something like that.
Yeah.
So of course, something like that happens. That because I have to be a cynic, I'll dodge and maneuver for good discussion. But at the end of the day, we're probably in the very small amount of people still talking about something like that. Everyone else is going to talk about what the big takeaways was. So it gets lost in the fray as most recovery discussions do when they're among something else. And I kind of just have to argue that sentiment because that's what Todd and I were talking about after the podcast we did earlier. Is of course that comes up and it gets lost in the fray and we move on. And so I had to just bring it up here, or I feel like it's going to get lost in the 24-hour news cycle of, 2020 dumpster fire that it continues to be.
Yes.
Well, let me compliment the voter. Mike, say the name correctly. The Voter Advocacy Project, right? And
Recovery Advocacy Project.
Recovery Advocacy Project and Mobilize. Listen, they've got a whole campaign going on. I taped a video of taping. I may get the words wrong, but basically why we should support recovery. So look, we built on that in Georgia, and we've got videos going out every day called Georgia Votes Recovery. So of course, the cynic in me, Alex, when they talk about like the largest employer in the nation, oil, we're going to get lost. But that's how it goes. But it goes back to Mike's point. If we start across the nation raising our voices, we're not going to be in 2020 where we want to be. And I'm not going to lie and say I think we'll be where we want to be 4 years from now. But I think in 8 to 12 years from now, at the federal level on presidential debates, we can be where we saw AIDS get to between 86 and 96.
Yes.
And in 2000. I really do think we can. That's at the federal level. Long before that, I think we can get in gubernatorial debates and have substantive time on the stage, and congressional debates and have time on the stage. And I think those congressional debates and gubernatorial debates can happen in 2 years. I think in some states, we're strong enough where we can force those issues.
Sure.
And Jeff, I think that the thing about our issue is like you take like the NRA, that's a Republican issue. This issue can be a purple issue.
It is a purple issue.
And it is, sorry, it is a
purple issue. Oh, it is.
I mean, because it's like I said, this was personal. I've been waiting on Joe Biden to do what he did last night. I'm waiting on him to do that. because I'll be frank with you. I've been undecided. Hell, I'm about ready to vote for the Libertarian candidate. Because as crazy as that sounds, I mean, because at least she's talking about it.
Sure.
They're I mean, they're
definitely the most vocal about it.
They're the most vocal about let's end the drug war. But at the same time, I'm like, well, if I vote, I'll maybe throw my photo. But that's just where I'm at with it, because I'm like, I can't vote for this guy. I can't vote for the other guy either. I mean, what am I, stay home? I mean, it's crazy, and people don't understand. But I mean, but I lived through this, and I mean, I was a drug user through the 80s. There was nothing for us but to get locked up. I watched my father go through this. Mental illness, substance use disorder. There was never any other option for him but to be locked up. And it was because of these policies. And Biden was on the front, was front and center with all of it. I'm sorry. I mean, I may piss some people off, but I don't care. And so anyway, I didn't mean to get on my soapbox about that, but it's
important to come like everyone should be informed at the exact same time, whether it's what they want to hear or not. I mean, that's very valid.
It's my personal experience.
Sure. And the last thing that I want to get to is this commenter on, I think that's Twitch, I'm not entirely sure, said that they had a question for Mr. Breedlove, and Mike, I'd love to hear your opinion about it. Says that they live in Australia, which is nice to have a global viewer.
Good day.
So I am not as well versed in American politics or local American issues, but I do tend to stay informed as much as I can. Also goes on to say, I notice in American states have all kinds of local governments like a Chamber of Commerce, and Mr. Breedlove had mentioned something about the drug pandemic in America. My question is, would it not be possible to nationalize things like we do in Australia to better fight back against the drug and opioid pandemic? Like, instead of asking the Chamber of Commerce or town council, would it not make sense to have a national thing at the state level to help fight these issues? In Australia, everything is nationalized, so we have to rely on help from the government. Doesn't Australia sound nice?
I love Australia.
Oh, man.
Listen to my friend in Australia. I had the privilege of hosting a delegation of elected officials from Australia and got to know them very well. And we stay in touch, a couple of us, via Facebook. And it's a wonderful country, and you have a great system of government. And as wonderful as it is certainly very different than ours. And
enlighten us, Jeff. I don't know anything about it.
Well, I mean, you can just start with population size. I mean, wonderful people, great continent nation, right? But just California alone. I mean, so it's not. It's like apples and oranges. It's really just not applicable. And that's no disrespect. I mean, maybe Australia, in some senses, is better off than us. We're just the biggest nation, the biggest economy. We have our gross national product is so much different, and the way we appropriate money out of Washington is so different, and the way we appropriate it in the states. And so I don't know that in America the Australian model would be perfect for us. Now, that's not to say that in our system of government there aren't some federal solutions, and then some state solutions, and then a whole bunch of local solutions. So I think the answer is, with some aspects of this, it would be very workable and effective at the federal level to have some federal rules, laws, and regulations, but not holistically like they do in Australia.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think so. And again, I envy Dark Sage. Ignorance is bliss, because America is very complicated in its political system and how it works to affect the recovery community. But one of the ways that I think about it I think like the Portugal flip is ideal to do as a nation. It's going to make a lot more sense to kind of try to do state by state and see how it works before, national
or
defelonization looks, or county by county, if that's what it takes. Absolutely, Mike.
Do it. That's what, yeah.
So I think, like national defelonization would be a great overarching law, but what that looks like in each state and what maybe certain how CSBs and RCOs get involved with that defelonization is going to look very different depending on the county even.
I just thought of an example, friend. I mean, think about it. We have a federal interstate highway system, right? And we can't even have all the states agree on what the speed limits ought to be. Right? I mean,
absolutely.
So we have a federal system of highways, and there are federal laws that govern you on a piece of highway, whatever state you're in. But there's also a different set of rules on the same highway in different states and in different parts of states. So it's we are a complex, stubborn people.
Well, if you even look at and we were talking about it today because we are looking at trying to form a committee, and we were looking at the strip. I was on a 2-hour meeting today with our state agency, and we're trying to put together a committee of people on recovery. We're behind you guys a little bit in Georgia to advocate. No, yeah, but to advocate for these pharmaceutical funds. But it's like you said, it's complicated because, okay, so you got SAMHSA, the federal arm, sends the block grants to DeOtis, which is our Department of Alcohol and Other Drug Abuse Services, and then they send the money to a county authority. And and they've been doing that since 1960, 70 kind of thing. So how do you break that up and say, wait a minute, guys, now we've got recovery community organizations. Now we have recovery housing. Now we've got this thing called recovery, and it needs to be funded also. So that's what we're working on in South Carolina. It gave me a headache today, but because we were in there trying to figure this out for 2 hours to put this committee together, because we know that we've got these pharma settlements that are probably going to each of our states, and maybe some of the states have already seen them. But what I can see happening, and here I go, Alex, is this money just going straight up a bull's butt somewhere? We're going to have to really be. I see you grinning up there, but we're going to really have to be vigilant and have a committee and be in their ear and go, oh no, this is going to go towards treatment, and this coalition that we're forming is strictly for recovery services.
Yeah, do we have time, Alex?
Yeah, please. No,
I think Mike
I'll call it when I feel like.
I think Mike couldn't be more right, and I think it's worse than what Mike was saying. It's not just that we have to have a committee, and we have to understand from a peer-led perspective that what's one thing that will happen. I promise this will happen. The sun's going to rise in the east tomorrow, and this is going to also happen. There will be people that undercut the peer community because they are the experts and they know how to do it. And they will come behind us and try to undercut us. And my warning to all peers across the nation is you've got to make certain that you understand that some people who say they're for you are really not for you. Therefore, managing you and taking the money and controlling you. They do not want peers having a voice in the disbursement of the money, and they certainly don't want peers having control of the money. And at the end of the day, I would put forth the premise that that's the peers' money. That's our money.
And I could even imagine, peers getting just a little bit more money, being satisfied with that when actually we are deserved a lot more than that. You know what I'm saying? It's almost like so grateful that we get this much when we actually kind of deserve a little bit more, but it's not what we're used to. And so then it kind of creates this stagnation of just getting enough to not stay hungry all the time.
Well, exactly. And so I don't know who all's in the call, but whether you're Todd in South Carolina or Alex in Virginia, and I know Johnny's on from Pennsylvania, Ryan's doing his thing nationally, Neil leads us in Georgia. I know there's a team in Nevada, wherever, and of course our friends in Connecticut, wherever good people are that are recovery leaders, when they ask you to get involved with advocacy, there's a reason why. And it may not make sense when they're doing it, but it's because if we do the grunt work now, when the serious money's on the table, we'll have the team in place, the army in place to make a difference, to make sure the peer voice is heard. But it is drop dead serious business, not just life and death, but millions of dollars. And if we don't work together, if we don't organize, people are going to take that money from us, and we're not going to have those programs that we need to do the things we know peers need done for recovery.
And Jeff, you said it right there, and that's what that's why I had a headache today after this 2-hour phone call, because we've got to work in South Carolina and probably in these other states. We have got to work together. We've got to quit siloing up. We can't have, we got the harm reduction guys over here doing great work. We got recovery housing over here. We got recovery communities over here. And then we got them fighting over a crumb and squabbling like a bunch of kids. We got to stop doing that.
Exactly.
We got to all get together at the same table, start building each other up, right? And then we can go to them, because here's the thing. Our state agency is not going to support us when we're squabbling like a bunch of youngins. We've got to get together and work with, like, the recovery housing. That's kind of it looks like that's going to be my committee, so to speak, or the committee that I'm on, has got to get with the recovery community organizations and start working and training and doing and build themselves up to the level that the recovery community organizations are. And now, and harm reduction and community outreach. And now, we're going to be able to do something, but
well, right. And Mike, to say it a little more bluntly than that, when the community that believes in peer-led recovery unites and says, we're no longer taking the crumbs, and we're going to have a united voice as look, doctors saved my life, counselors saved my life. I love these people, but I'm for the peer voice in recovery. And when the peer community unites, they're going to realize how strong they are, and they won't have to settle for crumbs. But what the other side wants, what all those professionals want, is the peers to fight over those crumbs and to not be united. Yep. And the minute we're smart enough, humble enough, strong enough to do what you're suggesting, we're going to change the equation.
Yeah, shout out to everybody, Rich Jones for kind of really taking the wheel and getting us all together and saying, look, we got to get together on this, or a lot of people aren't going to get the help that they need. So this has been, listen, I just want to say this. I've learned a lot from you tonight, Jeff. Thank you. And Alex.
Likewise.
Yeah, we need to, and
y'all two got to link up more often. I'm loving
this. This is recovery advocacy project, man. This is what we do. I mean,
Alex, all I heard tonight is I need to get some more slots to catch up with Mike, because apparently
y'all come on, and this will be your version of a town hall. I'll just ask a couple questions every now and then. Like I'm completely cool with that. I'm like,
and you are too, Mike. And I wasn't kidding, Mike. I'd love to come up to Greenville and sit down with you and talk about it. And Alex, I'm gonna be near Richmond next weekend.
Oh, please! That's my birthday weekend. We'll celebrate.
I'm gonna reach out to you.
Hey, Alex, I got your phone number. Todd gave me your phone number, so I might just hit you up and just say hello, man, kind of thing. And
I'd be so happy. I'd be delighted.
And I want y'all to know real quick before we leave, I'm excited. Wednesday was my 30th. I'm official.
Whoop, whoop, whoop.
Hey! Listen, I made it to Triple X with a bad back.
I feel you. Congratulations! And somebody just said hello from Wyoming, also a great state. Hey, Wyoming.
Hey, Martin.
Yeah.
Welcome,
job,
Wyoming.
guys.
All right, yeah. So, any other final thoughts? I just wanted to. Sorry, I got caught. You know what? I got to leave by saying, like, perfect example of the peer support model. One of my housemates needed his medication, so he was like, "Can I just slide in?" So I was like, "Of course, man." I mean, like this, and he was like, "I was watching the podcast, so it's trying to find a good spot." But like, I feel like that sort of interaction and like a fist bump, love you, man. that's not going to happen in like a medical center and stuff like that. So I
right.
think that's almost like a visual interpretation of what peer support just looks like and feels like, in my opinion. And that needs to be funded.
And let's get out here and fight for it. It's worth fighting for, because we all know I'm here because somebody met a drug user with dignity 30 years ago, right? Somebody said, Mike, you can do this and I'll walk with you. His name's Bill O. I don't know where he's at. Hadn't seen him since like 93, 94, but I think about him almost every day.
Beautiful. So, Mike, give me a call. Jeff, you and Mike will be on together again. That's a guarantee.
Yeah. Thank you, Jeff.
Creating solutions. Thank you guys very much. Shout out to our producer, Todd. Sorry for the technical difficulties. I love you guys. This has been Get in the Herd. Peace out.
Hi everyone, I'm Honesty Liller. I am the CEO of the McShin Foundation and a woman in long-term recovery. Since May 27, 2007, I have not used drugs or alcohol. Woo-hoo. Thank you so much to the Richmond Times-Dispatch and all of our voters for Get in the Herd podcast. Those podcasts are amazing. Not only has it helped thousands upon thousands of people in their recovery, as well as family members, but it has helped me in my personal recovery. I get to listen to them now in my car through Spotify and iHeartRadio. And it's just really important for us to be innovative in the addiction field and the recovery community. So when COVID hit, we had to be innovative. You know, we really had to think of like, what can we do to reach people that cannot go to 12-step meetings, smart recovery, faith-based, whatever, that we're shutting down constantly. So we were innovative here at McShin. Let's start podcast. So with Todd, John, Alex, and some other staff, you know, we all just kind of jumped in who can do what. And with Todd's lead and John's lead, the podcasts have been amazing and we're still doing them today. So I want to thank you for all of your votes and all of your energy and all of your support of our mission of healing families and saving lives. Thanks.
Tired of waiting, lost while I'm sitting at home. Dream of a new destination, lust for something unknown. Oh, you better leave it alone. I'd rather get up and go. How long can I lie around waiting for it? Sometimes you gotta walk out the door. No limits, no ceiling, no crown. No pressure gonna hold me down. No stop until I break every rule. No limits to what I can do. Nowhere is too far away. No border gonna stand in my way. No wall that I can't break through. No limits to what I can do.